Welcome into the install with Greg Cosell of NFL Films. It is preseason week 3. We are almost through the exhibitions, almost to the real football, but one more to go in a home game, Greg, for Cameron Ward and the Tennessee Titans. First opportunity for Titans fans to get out there and see him in person at Nissan Stadium, which I know they're looking forward to.
I don't think the NFL would be thrilled with you saying exhibition season there, Buck. It's the preseason. They're not exhibition games. Now, come on now.
Somebody going to pull up in a black van and toss me in a bag, huh? Yeah. I try to have a good attitude about these things, Greg, and then about the fourth quarter, I'm looking around in the press box thinking, "Oh, I'm contemplating my life choices," but it's fine. And
Yeah,
it's
well,
good opportunities for young players, a lot of young players on this team in
yep.
particular who are getting those reps, and they're going to be leaning on a lot of first and second year players beyond just the quarterback, but the quarterback is who we're going to focus in on, of course, today, although there are a couple of different pieces and parts that I think are worth touching on. We'll start with Cam though, Greg, if we could, and
Yeah.
there's really not a lot to dissect from three total series, two three and outs, and a drive that uh, came up short because of a few drops in particular that are worth talking about. But Cam on the first drive had a couple of really nice throws, one to Iamaner that was caught, and another one to Van Jefferson under duress that didn't the receiver didn't end up coming up with.
Yeah, that was actually an interesting play. That was a very similar concept to the Ridley 27-yard play in the first game. It was double post to the field, and this time Jefferson was the boundary X, and he ran the backside deep crosser. Um, to me, what was more important about that throw, and one can debate whether it should have been caught or should not have been caught. That's kind of irrelevant, really. But I just thought that the timing and anticipation was really good by Ward because one thing when I watch the tape and I have my clicker, I can freeze it as he's literally as he separates his hands to throw the ball. And that was an NFL throw, in a big time NFL throw, because when he started his delivery, he had to throw it essentially to air. He had to take Jefferson across the field. Um, and there are a lot of quarterbacks, particularly college quarterbacks, young quarterbacks, who don't see those kinds of throws, Buck, as viable throws because the receiver's not open. He's probably 15, 18 yards from where he's going to be when the ball would get to that spot. So, that those are the kinds of things I look at. I thought that was impressive. Like I said, we can debate should he caught it, should he not caught it, and I bet that's not even relevant to the coaching staff. As far as Cam, because that's the play. It's double post with a deep crosser or deep over, whatever they want to call it, and he threw it without any hesitation. And I think the other thing that was good about that play is the pass protection was really good. So
Yeah.
we've gotten used to seeing in the preseason, at least with the first unit, that there have been a number of plays where the pass protection's been good.
It's you almost have to like rub your eyes to make sure that you're actually seeing what you think you're seeing and understanding they're not having to pick up a bunch of blitzes or facing a bunch of different games up front from the defenses. They will week one in Denver, as we well know. But to your point, first with Cam, I think that Greg, I really liked. And I don't know that this is a terribly technical term, but I follow enough people like Dan Orlovsky and Chase Daniel on Twitter, former quarterbacks who will break some of this down beyond just yourself and breakdowns that I'm interested in kind of looking through. And I liked the way that Chase Daniel described it as arm arrogance in that
Yes,
particular throw.
yes, yeah. And one of the things, with Cam, and this is something that I look for when I watch college quarterbacks, and obviously I did with him. He can play off his back foot, and you have to be able to do that, in my view. I mean, not every quarterback can. It doesn't mean you can't run an offense, but throws like that, they're sort of back foot throws. It doesn't mean you're not transferring your weight, but he can play off his back foot and drive the ball with velocity. He does not need a lot of space to make throws. He's what we call a rotational thrower. He doesn't need to step necessarily. You want him to do this, but he doesn't always need to step with perfect lower body to the throw. You work on that. You want that to happen all the time, but he can play off his back foot and make those kinds of throws.
Yeah, and those are the kind of throws that I know fans are hoping to see. on Friday night, and then once we get into the regular season, in real live game situations, which is getting
You
closer
know,
and closer.
there was a lot of talk, as you know, about that 3rd and 13 on the second possession.
Hmm.
Um, you know the play I'm talking about,
Yeah.
where he threw the incompletion in the middle to DK.
Yes.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about that play, and obviously I looked at that multiple times. I mean, that's a very common play in the NFL. That was mirrored routes on each side, what we call a 7-step and a drag combination on each side. 7-stop, excuse me, 7-stop drag combination on each side, and DK ran kind of the on the ball route in front of Ward. So teams, there's different philosophies with that route concept. Some teams want to work to the outside, either side of the mirrored routes. Other teams work the middle of the field, as the Titans did, because Cam threw it up, he hit his back foot and threw it. So clearly his coverage read was DK in the middle. I thought he made the right throw. I thought he was decisive. I thought that DK slowed down, and this is a rookie receiver. I thought he slowed down rather than bending it inside to the soft spot in the zone.
Mm,
So I actually thought Cam made the right read and a good throw, and that's something that DK will learn is when you run that route and you're getting behind a defender like that, you've got to bend that to get away from the defender, and he slowed down.
yeah.
So it made it look like Cam forced to throw because the defender was there, and it made it look like, oh, bad throw. That's my read of it. As I said, I could be wrong, but that was my read of it because I've seen that route combination 1,000 times.
No, and it's a good observation in particular, Greg, because I think it's important to remind people that they kept Ridley and Lockett out of this game because they wanted
Correct.
Cam to get additional reps with DK, with Iamaner, and there's a lot of, new pieces and parts in that wide receiver room in particular, but the two fourth-round rookies and then also Gunnar Helm, a fourth-round pick at tight end,
Yep.
who actually, at least he's still pretty raw as a player, Greg, but they're very excited about Helm in particular. Yeah, Chigakonkwo was the better tight end overall at this point in time for obvious reasons, but they feel really good about the progress that he's making as he continues to pick up like tools and tricks of that particular position.
Well, the main thing with him, and you knew this from watching his college tape, is, and I'm sure that they're working on this with him, is can he line up as an attached tight end and be a blocker? Because ultimately, if he's going to become the guy, who knows what their thought is with Chig down the road. I guess he's in his third year now.
No, this is his fourth.
Is this Chig's fourth year?
This is a contract year for Chig and Roger
Uh,
McCreary, that class.
Time flies, boy. So I guess the issue becomes, can Gunnar Helm in their mind, and they can't answer that right now. They may have thoughts about it. They obviously do. They're with him every day. I'm not. But can he become a quote unquote number one tight end? We're not saying he's George Kittle, but can he
Mhm.
become a number one tight end to be that guy? You're going to have to line up attached to a tackle and block, DNs or outside linebackers, and you don't have to pancake them, but you got to block them in the run game. So I think that's probably the determining factor as to where they see him going because he's a very good receiver.
Yeah, and that's something Luke Stocker, the tight ends coach here, who obviously was on this roster as a player a couple of times,
Yeah, and he
he's
was that
talked.
guy, by the way. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And
yeah,
and he talked
yeah.
in training camp about, trying to make sure that these guys weren't niche players, right? That they were able to do
Right.
as much of the responsibilities of that position. There's a lot of responsibilities with that position in particular, of course. But that's what they're kind of looking to find out from that room because we know Chig has a more specific role. You get him the ball in space, he's
Right.
able to do a lot with the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
On the defensive side of the ball, unless you had another thought on offense before we flip,
No,
Greg.
I just, saying that and you're not going to make a definitive decision on Gunnar Helm, based on his rookie season. But if they were to ultimately decide that that wasn't his thing, like you really couldn't attach him and he could be a factor as a run blocker, then he becomes a little more of a, I hate to use the term you just used, but like a niche player. Becomes a certain kind of player. Still
Right.
valuable, but then you have to find a tight end who can do that, who can block.
Yeah, and they've been looking for somebody to take on the full responsibilities for quite
Right.
some time within this offense. Defensively, we saw a lot of Cedric Gray and James Williams in this
Yep.
game, and Cedric Gray is somebody who didn't get preseason last year, missed a lot of time due to injury. So really, we are treating this in a non-traditional sense, like his rookie season. And Greg, the coaching staff felt, and I'm sure your observation as well, was that he's just playing faster out there.
I agree. First thing I noticed, because I thought in the first preseason game, he just didn't look particularly quick or fast. And usually that happens when a guy's thinking through his responsibilities, because they're just a beat slow to trigger when they're thinking. I thought in this game that we saw that he just looked quicker, he looked faster. He showed better sideline to sideline play speed and range. I mean, he's not a burner. He's not one of those guys you go, oh my God, look at that guy run, but he's certainly not slow or plodding. And I thought he was very active in a lot of different ways. We saw him shoot the gap, in the second quarter, tackling the back for a 1 yard loss. He just looked like a quicker athlete. And again, he has the experience playing stack backer where Williams doesn't. Williams is learning how to play stack backer. I'm sure Gray's going to get meaningful snaps. They'll probably both get meaningful snaps in the final preseason game, and then they'll have to make a decision. But it was just in this particular game, and all we can do is what we have. And the other thing I try to tell people, and this, Buck, because you're there every day, and I've been doing this, for a year or two, is fans. The large percentage of fans are not at training camp, and they're not at the OTAs and the meetings and the whole deal. So they just see the games. But when all said and done, the games are probably the least important part of the process, especially if a guy plays 18 snaps. You know, but that's all the fans see. So they see if a guy doesn't play great in the game that, oh, he can't play. Whereas, he may be playing great. They may be really happy with him because all this started back in what, March or April? There's a whole process. And having, been to many training camps, including the Titans, it was only a couple of weeks ago, they're with these guys all day long. These guys get in at 6 o'clock. They don't leave till 7 o'clock. I mean, they're with them all day long. So they know these guys. So the 15 plays they play in a preseason game are probably the least important things in the entire process.
Yeah, and it's I understood and understandable why fans try to make things definitive because that's to your point, that's all they see. But
That's what they
there's
see.
so many more layers to this stuff
Yeah.
that goes into the process of being a professional football. Turns out it's not just a Sunday for 3 hours type of job.
No, and obviously that's what determines guys' careers and coaches if they, get hired or fired. But it's everything leading up to that really determines what happens in those 3 hours on Sunday.
So with that, I mean, it is going to be curious to see what they decide because those are two different players with different skill sets. But there's going to be, I mean, they're both going to have to play
Right.
snaps on defense. Who plays the bulk of them? I'm sure they'll make a decision next to Cody Barton here in the coming days if they aren't already don't have a direction in which they're leaning. And then the other component of this, Greg, and this, this would normally be the lead of the conversation that you and I
Right.
have, but it's just such a weird situation here around L'Jarius Sneed. He was officially activated off PUP yesterday, and he was a
Yep.
limited participant in practice. And the limitations on him and his practice schedule because of that degenerative condition in his knee is something that, expects to be a part of the routine, but they need him. Like they need him desperately
Without
because
question.
their cornerback situation is pretty fraught. It's Roger McCreary, it's Jarvis Brownlee, and then it's a bunch of dudes that they've just tried to piecemeal a secondary together with. The depth is obviously not there. It's not like teams have a bunch. There's not a bunch of teams that have good corner depth around the league. But even if it's not two-time Super Bowl champion L'Jarius Sneed, even if it's average to slightly above, the front office, the coaching staff has been, hoping and wishing and waiting for this guy to become available yet again because there is no
Yeah.
question that they need him in this defense.
And it's yeah, and I like the way you just ended in this defense. They need him. He's important in any defense, but in this defense, because we know Denard Wilson likes pressure.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you have to play pure man to man behind pressure. There's all kinds of pressures where you don't have to play man necessarily, but at some point in almost all pressures, you're going to have some kind of match. Some are pure man matches, some are zone match, but they don't really have a true corner that can match and play at a high level. I think we all love Brownlee. We love his competitiveness. We love he's how feisty he is. And he'll probably play on the outside because he has to. And you know what? He'll compete. But in an ideal world, he's a slot in an ideal world. And I think the organization believes that as well. But he may have to well play on the outside. Whereas Snead, if he can play even 90%, again, who knows, like you said, it's a weird situation. He can line up and he can play man, and he's physical and he plays with a swagger. And, he is really needed on this team. So I guess we'll find out in the coming weeks. It's a good sign that he came off PUP. He may be one of those guys that never practices because of the degenerative situation. I know that was the case with the Chiefs. I also know, in speaking over the years to Steve Spagnuolo, the Chiefs coordinator, that he loved Snead and felt he was so critical to what they did because they played a lot of press man
Mm.
and had some really cool pressure concepts, obviously, that Spags is known for. So he's really a critical piece. Teams don't care if he's, what he does on Wednesday and Thursday, but if he can line up on Sunday and play up to the level that he's played at before, that's a big deal for the Titans.
Yeah, and this is not a film thought or a schematic thought, Greg, but and not a question that you or I are equipped to answer. But like, I don't know how they get him in condition. He's talking
Yeah,
about his conditioning yesterday,
I
and
know.
it's just such a specific situation for him that like I don't know how you play NFL corner with the kind of limitations that he has. But it worked in Kansas City.
Yeah, it's a total unknown. Unfortunately, we just don't know the answer. My guess is right. If they were to have to play tomorrow, you'd have Brownlee at one outside corner and Baker at the other, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And look, we're not knocking Baker at all. He actually, held his own last year. What he ended up starting the last 6, 7, 8 games. Something like that. I can't remember
Correct.
exactly. And believe me, it wasn't as if he was torched. But in an ideal world, you'd probably, like to have Snead out there instead of Baker.
Yeah, and just in the early going, and I don't know how much of this you observed when you were here, as you mentioned a couple of weeks ago, but Baker has kind of just been a practice squad fringe roster guy
Yes,
for the majority of his career. And
his
last year,
career.
to your point, he had a bunch of opportunities. He took advantage of it. There was mitigating circumstances like the field position that the special teams that was awful would put them in, so they were having
Right, right.
defend short fields on a regular basis. So you try not to make too many judgments, but if you're talking about regression to the mean, potentially Baker is one of those candidates that you're kind of looking around at and being like, I'd really love if I'm the Titans to not have to put him out there as often as I did in 2024.
And the thing that maybe a lot of fans don't think about is what if you don't have corners you really feel comfortable with, then that limits what Denard Wilson feels he can call and what he
Right.
can trust, in given situations. So now the playbook gets shrunk. And now offenses in the league, when they study the Titans, they know that. They see that. They see the playbook is shrunk on defense. Hey, we're not going to get these kinds of pressures because Denard is clearly not comfortable with his corners playing whatever it may be, you know. So that's the issue. Hey, all the credit in the world to Baker. I mean, maybe he's going to end up being a 10 or 12-year player and having, that's those guys, not that they care what I think, but those guys I respect tremendously because they just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And then, they're not, athletically and physically good enough, to be starters and every year, hey, that guy's out there.
Yeah.
But they just hang on and they work and they do it. But, it impacts what Denard Wilson can call. And that's where the issue really comes into play.
Yeah, it's just we've been talking for so many years, Greg, about coordinators having to condense their playbook, whether it's because you
Yep.
need chip or additional protection. You need tight ends to stay in, wide receivers to stay in to help chip or block. On the
Yeah.
offensive side of the ball, you're talking about the limitations that having a less than ideal cornerback situation would put on a defense. And I know there's no perfect scenario for any coordinator on any team in the NFL week after week after week, but it feels like they have been so limited by personnel here
Right. And
specifically for so
yeah,
long.
there's no defense that has 11 studs,
Yeah,
11 great guys, but it depends on the position in terms of how you can go about calling the game. There are some positions that are more important than others within the context of what a coordinator wants to do. And you and I both know we've been around Denard. I mean, he wants to be aggressive. He's not a sit back guy.
Yeah.
And that does put a burden on your back end.
So, a little less than 3 weeks now before Denver, so they have a little bit of ramp up time here for L'Jarius Sneed. It's, you can only take the positives as they come right now. Right now, it's a positive that he's more available
Yep.
today than he was 2 days ago. So, that's just kind of the space that the Titans are operating in on the back end of their defense. Greg, we'll have one more preseason game tomorrow, at least for the Titans, and then we'll be done. And we'll be moving
And then
forward into the
we're
regular
then we're on
season.
to Denver. We can have some great talks about Denver. There's an awful lot to. We could probably do two shows on Denver because there's an awful lot to talk about. They're really a fun team, fun in the sense of what they do. For someone like myself, they're really kind of an interesting team to watch and to talk about.
Yeah, it's going to be, as you mentioned a couple of weeks ago. This is a big homework game for them as they
Yep.
work towards that opening date, and we'll have football across the board. We'll have college football next week. We're finally back, buddy. We made it.
College football starts this weekend, actually.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
week zero, and that
week
doesn't mean it'll be
zero.
good college football, but it's real football for once, for the first
Who
time.
does who does Tennessee open with? They don't play this weekend, right?
No, Tennessee opens with Syracuse in Atlanta.
Oh, so that'll be a national TV game. Yeah.
Yeah, and Syracuse not as good this year, doesn't project to be as good this year as they
Right,
were
right.
last year, but still an interesting test for Tennessee without Nico Iamaleava, Joey Aguilar coming over to be their starting
Yeah.
quarterback now.
Well, it's
It's
funny. I was thinking, on that play we spoke about where, Ward made the great throw that Jefferson didn't catch.
yeah,
Um, that was Latham at right tackle just ate up James Pierce. He just ate him up in pass protection.
yeah, and Pierce is going to be an interesting one to watch in the
Yep.
pros. Just watching 2 days of him at joint camp and then the game, and particularly against JC. They gave up a lot to pick him in the first round, Greg, and that's not
Yeah.
his fault, but he's going to have some level of expectation to be a game changer, and he's obviously not there yet. It's very early in his career.
Did you get any sense of Jalen Walker when you were watching?
I did a little bit. They're just trying to ramp him up, it seems. Given that
Right.
he's such a gifted physically player, but the tools, kind of like we talk about with Femi a little bit, they're so hyper focused on getting the technique stuff down with him
But
first and
the thing
foremost.
with him, which is different than Femi, is he's not a big guy. I
Yeah.
mean, Femi's got. I mean, he's a legit 6'3", 260, and he looks it. Walker's not that big.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's gonna cause him some early issues, or at least issues in the
Yeah.
early onset of this. But they I mean, at least talking to people on the Atlanta sideline at their practice facility, they're cautiously optimistic about both of them, understanding that they need anything that they can get on defense, especially in that front seven.
Oh yeah, they couldn't rush the quarterback last year at all.
Yeah, and we don't have to get into this today, obviously, Greg. But since we're just hinting at a little bit of college football, I'm excited about Indiana. I don't know how much you've watched Fernando Mendoza, the former
Oh,
Cal quarterback. That's
I watched 6 games. I watched 6 games. I really like that kid. I think with a really good year, he'll be in a first round conversation for sure. He looks the part for sure. And they're bringing and the wide receivers back. I did him as well. He's a very interesting guy. He's big, physical, catches the ball. They're an interesting team.
yeah. We might dip our toe into a little bit of the summer college tape that you were watching next week as well. I
Yeah.
think. Because I think there are some fascinating things about this upcoming college football season that are worth diving into with you as
Oh
well, if
no,
you're
no.
up for it.
I've watched probably 90 to 100 guys in detail who will likely be in next year's draft. So I've seen a bunch of guys. I didn't get to Indiana's defense. I know they have a couple of guys, but from last year, I know the Niners are really high on CJ West. He's had a really good camp out there.
Yeah, he was one of the more impressive players on that defense in the middle of their defense, certainly. And I'm I've never had a reason to care overwhelmingly about Indiana football, but they're making
Well,
strides.
especially I know you've been sorely disappointed in the Hoosiers in basketball in the last couple of years, so now you can get excited about football.
I don't think that's how that works, but I would trade a national championship football program for a winning basketball season, Greg. But I'm a bit tormented that way. I appreciate you, you as always, buddy, and I'll look forward to doing it again next week and talking about some real live action football as we get closer and closer to week one. Thank you as always.
Thanks, Buck. Appreciate it.